Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is the first in our 2018 complimentary public education events. We are particularly grateful today to Parson Environmental Products Incorporated for being both our presenter and one of our H2O outstanding supporters. Without the generous support of fellow committed professionals, we would be unable to provide our online classes and our trainings at low, or as in this case, no cost. Yes, Mike. Okay, like Parson, we are as committed as all of those attending today to the basic core principle that, as our motto says, water is water, not waste. As there's been significant response to this particular event, we would appreciate your participation in that poll that we have made available, and I'm going to go ahead and put that poll on the screen while I do that again. Let me bring that over, and let's just make that a little bit bigger. Okay, we live at a time when this basic truth has never been more important to understand. When vast areas of our service countries, the people that we provide education for, are struggling with providing the most fundamental of human rights, that being the access to safe drinking water and decent sanitation. All of you today that went to the bathroom and got to use a wonderful modern convenience, I hope right now you're feeling pretty thankful that you live in a place that has that. When we use and reuse water, we need to govern how we as a global community of nations live up to our obligation to protect and preserve our planet's infinite supply. We do not have a limitless supply of fresh water. We need to read our disclaimer. The presentations that WasteWater Education 501c3 hosts and make publicly available should not be construed as an endorsement or paid advertising. We do accept and encourage sponsorships, and we love to have people who underwrite these events because that enables us to provide them, as we said, at no charge to you. You can view our annual reports and our transparency policies on our website, and I'm just going to put the link into the chat window for you, although there was this information on the invitation that went out. Okay, at this point, I am going to minimize my notes and bring up your chief presenter to today and introduce Craig Gall, who is the president of Parson Environmental Products. Take it away, Craig.
Thank you very much, Dender. It's a pleasure to be here today. And I, first of all, would like to thank everyone for spending time with us today and taking that time out of your busy schedule. And we certainly all hope that today will be both educational and enjoyable. So let's get right to it. A little bit about our company to start things off. We were founded in 1985, and we were known as Parson Plastics at that time. We were a sister company of a company called Parson Industries that was a custom plastic vacuum forming company. So it's no coincidence that our first product, the Parson manhole insert, was manufactured by that company because it is a plastic product. So, and you can also kind of see how the name Parson ties into everything and where it came from. Back then in 1985, just to turn the clock back a bit, a gallon of gas was $1.12. The median price for a single family home was $93,000. There were no cell phones, no GPS, no internet, and no personal computers. How could we possibly have survived that? I had to look up numbers in a phone book to contact local municipalities to set up appointments, and I would call them on my desktop push-button landline phone. And I would typically take about 10 inserts with me to appointments, and on more than one occasion, I actually sold them right out of the trunk of my car. It's kind of an interesting story. In 1989, we decided to change the name to Parson Environmental Products, which obviously is what it is today, to kind of better represent the direction the company was headed. And in 2007, we upgraded the logo from the original to what you see today. I'd like to spend a little time talking about the Clean Water Act because it does have some relevance and importance here, not only because of Denner's organization with water, but it also has an impact on the sewer industry. The Clean Water Act was set up by the federal government to grant funding for wastewater treatment plants and expansion of existing wastewater treatment plants. And they were trying to do that in an effort to decrease the number of discharge of pollutants into tributaries. And at some point along the way, someone must have realized that this isn't working. The only thing it was doing was basically giving the sewer plant a larger area to take in its flow, but it still was disrupting the chemistry of the wastewater treatment plant when it was taking in too much infiltration. So in late 1984, early 1985, there was an amendment to the Act that changed what you could get funding to do. And there was only 3 things that you could do. There was no longer the availability of money for building a new plant or expanding an existing plant. The only 3 things you could do was get funding for secondary treatment, new interceptors, and believe it or not, inflow and infiltration correction. So up to this point, there wasn't an overwhelming demand for collection system rehab products or services. And the amendment changed all that basically with the stroke of a pen. The need had always been there. And now, finally, the funding was available to do the necessary work. So the municipalities got into action on that. We've always been very willing to listen to customers and the market when someone has a need for a particular product that may not be out there right now. And that has helped us to grow our product line to about 30 products now that are focused on rehabilitation of manholes, wet wells, septic tanks, and other underground concrete structures. And we're very proud of the fact that we pay close attention to customer service, whether it's before, during, or after the sale. And I really believe that this approach to doing business has greatly contributed to our longevity. And now it gives me great pleasure to introduce Mike Ferrugia. Mike is our field information specialist. He's been with the company about 10 years, and he's going to guide us through the next part of the program. Take it away, Mike.
Hey, Craig. Thanks for the great introduction. First, I'd like to give a big thank you out there to Dendra and Kate for setting all this up, and a reminder that WasteWaterEducation.org is a nonprofit 501c, and donations are always appreciated. So the first question is, why are we here? And that's to talk about manhole rehabilitation, the methods, the materials, and choosing the right products for your project, and in doing so, you'll get the most out of your maintenance budget. At the end of this presentation, we will give you a link to our technical specifications for manhole rehabilitation, and if you need them in doc format for cut and paste, just let us know. Now, some manufacturers out there that make only one product, they say this product does it all, but that's not realistic. Also, there are a few manufacturers that require contractors to purchase a territory, and this will limit the number of qualified contractors that can bid on a job, and it also limits municipalities from doing rehab in-house. One of our specialties is teaching municipalities to do these projects in-house. Now, every situation is different, and there is no one method for every rehab project. And products that require purchase territories truly benefit the manufacturer and not the end user. Now, the first part of our spec is labeled Intent and Method of Manhole Rehabilitation. So basically that means why. Why does the structure need to be rehabbed? Is it to stop inflow? Is it to stop infiltration? Structurally rehabilitate? Are the cover and the chimney in need of repair? Are there joints and cracks and holes that are either exfiltrating or infiltrating? Are the pipe penetrations or the pipe seals in need of repair? Are there roots growing into the structure? Or could it be hydrogen sulfide corrosion is happening, which is also known as microbial-induced corrosion? And I'll get into that in a few seconds here. Now this picture right here is a before picture, and I'm going to get my arrow going here. And oops, share it. Hold on just a second here. For some reason it went blank on my side.
Yeah, just a second, Mike. I think you closed the document.
Okay, my
So,
mistake.
not a problem. And ladies and gentlemen, if we have a technical issue, just bear with us. While we are doing this, I'm just going to pause the recording.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Okay, getting my arrow in here. It won't let me pull the arrow down. But basically, if you look at this manhole here, you can see that it's been relined recently, and the chimney is definitely in need of repair. So if you look in this manhole, you would obviously not want to worry. There's my little arrow. If you look here, you can see the chimney here area and into the frame and covers in need of repair, and it's already been relined in this area. So obviously in this case, you'd want to address the chimney area and not worry about the other areas. Now this next picture shows brick manholes. Now these brick manholes, as you can see, they've been here for quite some time, and they've lasted a long time. Now, you can see they're in need of structural rehabilitation and definitely got to fix some loose bricks to stop an I&I. So in this case, we recommended only a cement relining, allowing more structures to be rehabbed. These pictures actually came from a job at the West Point Military Academy, where originally the Army Corps of Engineers wanted to use our composite system. And what that is that's where the cementitious product is applied in the first phase to structurally rehabilitate the integrity of the structure, and then the epoxy is applied in the second phase to resist corrosion, and then they cure together, making the system composite. After a few meetings with us, they quickly realized that their system had a lot of age deterioration and that they could eliminate that epoxy phase, which was more than 50% of the cost of the project, and then they were allowed to rehabilitate more than twice as many manholes using our fiber reinforced microsilica enhanced cement. So it worked out really well for them, reaching out to us and contacting us prior to actually starting their project. These next pictures here show a bunch of deterioration, and you can kind of see over here that's really extreme, and on this one here it's not as extreme, but it's definitely starting to deteriorate. Okay, there's a lot of debate out there on whether this type of corrosion is caused by the H2S gas or sulfuric acid produced by microbes, which I mentioned earlier, which is known as microbial-induced corrosion deterioration. So what is MIC? It's a bacteria on the surface of the sewer structures. It's a sulfur oxidizing bacteria known as Thiobacillus thioxidans that consumes the H2S gas that is in all waste streams, and it discharges or excretes a sulfuric acid, H2SO4, which destroys all concrete and metal and just about anything it comes in contact with. Now, I understand that's a pretty simplistic explanation, and there definitely is a lot of research out there on MIC, so you can go ahead and look it up and you'll learn more about this cycle. But the real takeaway here is if MIC is present, address those microbes. If you just reline the structure with cement, the microbes will begin to attack that new lining. So what we would recommend doing is to reline it with an epoxy coating after a minimum of a half-inch cement relining is applied, even if that manhole structure is not compromised. This is done to stabilize the surface, to actually stop that MIC cycle, and it also smooths and profiles the surface for better adhesion of the epoxy coating. If you're not going to include an epoxy, at least use an additive that fights MIC, and Craig will talk about that additive a little bit later, or a calcium aluminate-based product where the calcium aluminate, by its chemistry, fights against the MIC. Now, I've also seen many specs out there where the MIC deterioration is extreme and they require the MIC additive into the cementitious product, whether it's Portland-based or calcium aluminum-based, and then they also require a coating of the epoxy. So now the next question, I always get a lot is how? How do we find out what's wrong with our system? Well, basically some form of evaluation or asset management survey does this. Now that could be a big buck survey done by an engineering firm or simply a foreman in your department visually inspecting and identifying repairs. But they have to have an end goal. And that is the structure in need of rehab? Are we looking to control I&I like you see here in this picture? There's a lot of water over top of that. Or are you looking to stop further corrosion? A lot of times it's a combination of these issues that are identified during that evaluation. Now, a real good example of this is during an inspection, it's found that the manhole itself is in great shape. But during rain events, and you're seeing a lot of situations here pop across the screen, the rain events lead to a lot of excessive inflow, either through the pick holes or through the top cover. Then there's a simple, cost-effective solution, and that would be to install manhole inserts. And in this next picture, you can see it's basically just put right onto the frame flange, and then the cover's reinstalled on it. So for an investment of less than $50 per manhole and the simple labor to install that insert, you can get a huge return on a little bit of an investment. This next PDF she's going to show you here is an inflow cost analysis. Now this inflow cost analysis is available from our website, and it's also, we'll give you a link to it after the presentation is done. This link gives you the spreadsheet that is customizable directly to your system. You can change the number of manholes, you can change the cost per treatment. So it's a very useful spreadsheet to determine savings. So reach out to us after the webinar if you have any questions, and we can show you how to use it for your personal use. Now I could go on for days here, but the takeaway again is very simple. Every situation is different, and there is no one method for every rehab situation. Now the next part of our specs is labeled materials. And I want to make a little note here because I'm going to talk about a mil. And 1 mil equals 1/1000th of an inch, 250 mils is 1/4 of an inch, 500 mils is 1/2 of an inch, and 1,000 mils equals 1 inch. Now, I'm not going to get into the types of materials because Craig's going to be discussing that in a few seconds in detail. But I do want to emphasize again, no one solution for all manhole rehab projects, but rather proper material selection will get you the best return for your investment when the type of rehab material or process addresses the cause of deterioration. Now, our experience in most cases leads us to recommend rehabilitating the structural integrity with the budget-friendly cementitious products, and then, when necessary, coating with a layer of the epoxy that is excellent against corrosion. Now, a common question I hear often is how do we quantify a project's scope of work so we can put it out to bid or come up with a workflow if we're doing it in-house? Now, this will vary by the type of structure and the size of the structure. But one example here is a pump station, always filled with all kinds of mechanics. So removing and replacing those pumps, rails, floats, electrical boxes, that would be one bid item or one workflow item, while rehabbing the structure is another workflow item. Now, I know that's very highly simplified, but reach out to us during the planning stage of your specific project. We can learn the parameters together, and then we can help quantify that a little better. Next, I want to do a little bit of simple math here example to show how to calculate materials required for rehab consisting of a cementitious structural lining and coating that new lining with an epoxy for corrosion resistance. Now, for this example, I'll use one of the most common manhole sizes out there, which is a 4-foot round by various depths. Now, most cases, this is done in vertical feet of rehab needed, similar to CIPP, where it's done in lineal feet of pipe needed to be repaired. Now, manufacturers will tell you their coverage in square feet of their product at a certain thickness. So for this example here, I'm going to use a cementitious product that comes in 50-pound bags. Now, any 50-pound bag of any cementitious material will cover approximately 10 square feet at a 1/2 inch thick. But most manholes have a cone for reduction at the top, so the entry point isn't 4-foot round. Could you imagine if a manhole lid was 4 foot round, it would take a crew of 3 just to lift the lid. So they reduce this usually to somewhere between 24 to 27 inches at the opening through the installation of a reduction cone. If you take this reduction into consideration, we found that 50 pounds of cementitious material will cover approximately 1 vertical foot on average at a 1/2 inch thick in a 4 foot round structure. Now obviously the deeper the structure is, the less this reduction is a factor in determining materials required. So for different size structures, depths, and thicknesses, it's just some math. And I have a little graphic here which has a bunch of math on it. And let's assume that there is no reduction cone and that the manhole is 4 foot round top to bottom. Now doing the math on the graphics, you get 151 square feet of walls and 13 square feet of bench in a 12 foot deep 4 foot round manhole. For this manhole to reline the walls and the bench with a 1/2 inch of structural cementitious material, you'll need approximately 16 50-pound bags of material to coat the walls and the bench of this manhole. Now to coat the new lining with 80 mils of corrosion-resistant epoxy, you'll need approximately 8 gallons. Again, feel free to reach out to us and we can further discuss these calculations on any specific job you have. Another big question we get a lot is how thick should we reline a structure with cementitious products and how thick for epoxy corrosion resistance. We recommend a minimum of a 1/2 inch of structural cement in all cases, and sometimes as thick as 3 inches, depending on how deteriorated the structure is. Now, we also recommend if epoxy is needed, our studies have shown that 80 mils has been very effective in the sewer environments. So contact us with questions about concerning thickness, and I'm sure we can help on a one-on-one basis. Hope I was clear here, and if not, reach out to us and we can discuss things in person. And now I'll hand things back over to Craig, who will give an overview of product choices.
Thanks a lot, Mike. What we're going to try to do today is run down the process by which a manhole would be rehabilitated. We're going to kind of go in order from top to bottom, so to speak. So the first thing we're going to do is look at cleaning the manhole, which is extremely important in order to try to make sure you have a good adhesion of your products to the manhole wall. The industry standard is somewhere in the 3,500 psi range, and that seems to be pretty sufficient for proper cleaning. You need to get rid of all the grease, any buildup, any loose material that may be there. Again, just to make sure that we're not going to have any problems with bonding. What we don't want to do is get the pressure too high. So sometimes, especially in this case, more is not better. You could end up damaging the manhole using, say, 10,000 psi. I would say probably 3,500 to 4,000, maybe 5,000 tops would be where you'd want to be. So after we've got the manhole cleaned, we're going to go in and we're going to look at infiltration points, because all those have to be stopped prior to applying a coating, because anywhere there's infiltration, no matter how small it might be, it's not going to allow the lining or coating to bond to the manhole in that area. So there's several different ways you can do that. This is a picture showing a hydraulic cement that mixes with water. You can do that basically at the job site. It sets up in about 1 minute. Now, this kind of material is not typically recommended for a large volume leak, 30, 40, 50 gallons a minute. That volume, as it is, will not allow that material enough time to set. Now, you could slow down the flow of that 30 or 40 gallons a minute with oakum or something else, and you might get away with it. But as Mike said earlier, not every product is capable of dealing with every problem. So that's why we have more than one infiltration repair product. So moving up the line, we get to grouts, urethane grouts. This particular picture is our seal-tight grout. It's a 2-component urethane It starts reacting in about 7 seconds, and it is good for about 50 gallons a minute. This is very serious stuff. When you start injecting it, you need to inject the entire tube set into the manhole. And to prepare the surface, you need to drill a hole through the manhole to the outside, because the way this material expands, there's not going to be enough room in the small hole to take care of all that material. So you want to basically stop the leak from the outside of the manhole. The other two urethane grouts we have are a hydrophobic grout, which means it does not need water to react, and a hydrophilic grout, which does need water to react. So a hydrophobic grout will cure to a more of a hard closed cell material. It won't be quite as flexible, but it's good for large volume leaks and also for voids outside the manhole. A hydrophilic grout is better used for a joint area or some other area that would be prone to movement, because that particular grout will cure to a closed cell foam, but it will be more of a spongy material. So moving on to, once we've got the leak stopped, we're going to move on to taking care of any patching that we need to do. Maybe a brick has fallen out. Maybe there's a chunk of a manhole that came away for some reason, or there's holes in the bench or something. We can go in with a fast set hydraulic cement material. It sets up in about 30 minutes that you can mix on the job site, and you can hand apply it or apply it with a trowel and finish it off. And by the time you get ready to go with the rest of your materials, this will be dry and ready to accept the lining or coating. Now we move on to the linings and coatings. The first section of this are cementitious linings, and there are several variations of that. And basically they're broken up by how effective they are in corrosive conditions. So the first level is a Portland cement material, microsilica enhanced and fiber reinforced. This will do a low to medium level of corrosion protection. It can be applied up to 3 inches thick, and it can either be applied by a spin caster, which you just saw, or actually a kind of a shotcrete gun type setup. It is a wet applied material. The next level would be a cementitious product that uses calcium aluminate cement versus Portland cement. They look the same, they act the same for the most part, but a calcium aluminate by nature will provide a little bit higher level of corrosion protection. Beyond that, we go to a calcium aluminate material that uses a calcium aluminate aggregate, which fortifies it even further. So you can see we're just stepping up the level of corrosion protection that we're trying to establish here. The newest product on the line is, there's a few companies that have them now. It's called a Geo Polymer Material. It looks just like a cement product. It acts like a cement product. It smells like a cement product. But actually, the main ingredient, which in the MH Liner's case is Portland cement, is replaced with fly ash. And it's been found that fly ash really provides some great corrosion protection, because it takes the cement matrix out of that complete formula, and the cement is what gets attacked by hydrogen sulfide and MIC corrosion. So speaking of MIC corrosion, Mike had mentioned earlier, we do have an additive for that we can put with either our Portland cement product, which is the MH liner, or the calcium aluminate product, which is called CA Liner 100. And the dosage is about 6 ounces per bag. And again, when it's applied, it looks the same as it looked when there was just water. But what this will do is break the chain of events so that the bugs will not be able to inhabit the walls, and therefore will not be around when hydrogen sulfide is present, and obviously that will not allow the hydrogen sulfide to be turned into sulfuric acid. Now the upper level, or the highest level in my opinion, for corrosion protection are epoxy coatings. When applied correctly, an epoxy will for the most part outperform a cement product over the long term in most cases. We have a system where we can apply a cement undercoat and an epoxy top coat in the same day. And what this will do is give the epoxy great adhesion to the substrate, which has been a problem in the past with epoxies, and it kind of got a bad rap for that back in the day, and things have improved quite dramatically since then. But the system that we try to promote kind of takes that out of the equation, because every single manhole we know what we're bonding our epoxy to, and it's always one of our cement products. We have two epoxies, the first being Parson Epoxy SEL 80, which can be applied at about 100 mils per coat in either spray or hand apply, and also Parson Epoxy SEL 80 HB, which can be applied at about 150 mils per coat. That is set up to be a plural component spray system, but we have done it by hand. You just have to be very quick, because it is a fast reacting product, and again it's designed to be pumped through a plural component system, which means that the A and the B are not coming in contact with each other until literally the last second, till it hits the gun for the most part. So the reaction time is pretty quick. Since we've developed these products, we also realized, well, we need equipment to apply them. So we have a nice line of equipment ranging from some portable stuff up to some trailer stuff mounted. We have epoxy sprayers. We have spin casters for both the cement and the epoxy. So we can provide basically soup to nuts from the materials to the equipment. And also we offer training on site for either the products or the equipment or both. Now, moving on to the manhole, we're going to get up to the chimney seals, which Mike had talked about in the beginning of his presentation. Chimneys are somewhat overlooked because sometimes there's the cementitious lining material is applied up onto the frame, and that's really not a good idea, because 9 times out of 10 it's going to crack over time, maybe sooner than you think. You really need to have a flexible material up there. So what we recommend is, if you're going to do a cementitious lining or an epoxy coating, it doesn't really matter, just take that up to the underside of the frame, make your repairs with the patching material to fill in any gaps, and then we have 2 products that you can use to kind of create a joint or a bond between the manhole frame and the manhole structure itself. And the picture you're seeing now is a product called Parson Epoxy FP. Comes in a kit form. It's easy to mix, easy to apply, can be put on with a brush or gloved hand. Beyond that, we can get into a EPDM rubber sleeve with stainless steel bands that hold it in place. Obviously, you can see the ribbing on the EPDM rubber. It makes it very flexible, able to move around, which is very important again for this part of the manhole, because you're not only taking on impact, but you're also dealing with freeze-thaw situations in colder areas. And you can see the installation equipment for the flex rib seal. The left side is a manual tool, and on the right side is a hydraulic powered pump that will spread the bands until they're tight. And you can see the buckets of the FP as well. So after we've got all that taken care of, we got the cleaning done, we've stopped the infiltration, we patched our areas, we've decided on aligning our coating, we put the chimney seal in, and now we're going to take a look at the invert. Inverts are done on occasion. It's not a regular occurrence. My advice is, if there's not a problem with it, leave it alone. because you're going to end up having to bypass the manhole flow. Now you can do this from inside the manhole with a flow-through plug and a corrugated pipe. And it makes it a little bit easier, but at the end of the day, you are still bypassing the manhole. So you're still going to be restricting the flow somewhat. And there's a risk involved with that, as we all know. So again, if there's not a big problem with it, I would take the lining or coating material and take it to the edge of the bench and call that good. So at the very top of the manhole, the last thing you would want to do is install manhole inserts. Now, Mike had talked earlier about the benefits, cost benefits of installing inserts. And yes, they are relatively inexpensive for what they can do. The insert was developed because there was a lot of inflow problems that weren't being corrected and couldn't be corrected with manhole rehab. Very simple. You're not addressing that part of the manhole. So you were getting some benefit from doing the rehab, but not as much as you could get if you installed the insert as well. So with or without pick holes, an insert can keep out 30 to 50 gallons of water per minute with 1 inch of water either ponding or flowing over it. Now, back in 1986, I had a meeting with an engineer locally, and he was a proponent of inflow and infiltration correction. And he was aware of our product, and we talked about it, and he decided to do a trial. So he took 10 inserts and placed them in a township that was about 26 square miles in area at all different parts of the township. And he put 2 of them purposely in areas where he was pretty sure that there would be no inflow problems. No inflow problems. So after a month or so, some rain events, we went out, we checked every single manhole. We pulled the covers and looked at the lids, at the inserts, to see if there was water present. And lo and behold, every single insert had capacity of water. It was full to the top, or full to the vent holes anyway. So that kind of showed him why not just put an insert in every manhole, because they're not that expensive, and you just can't predict which manholes are going to be subject to inflow and which ones aren't. So it was a very eye-opening experience for all of us. You can see on the left the installation is relatively simple. You remove the manhole cover, clean the bearing surface, the area where the cover rests on the frame, with a wire brush or something of that nature. You place the insert in and you put the cover back on. So all you need to do for ordering is measure the OD and ID of the frame, and if the cover has any ribbing, which this one does on the underside, we would need the diameter and the depth of that, because that basically has to fit inside the insert, and the insert fits inside the manhole frame. So there's a diagram on our data sheet that shows you the measurements that we need, and certainly we're always available to assist you with that. And I believe we do have a video on our website that kind of goes through the process. So I'd like to wrap up my end of the show. It's very difficult to pinpoint how much infiltration, how much inflow is contributed to manholes. But the theories are about 30 to 50%. So that's whether it's infiltration from hydrostatic leaks in walls, benches, or inverts, or if it's inflow through manhole covers, regardless of whether or not they have pick holes. And by the way, that story I told earlier, those manhole covers, those 10 manhole covers, did not have pick holes, and they still took in a bunch of inflow. So our idea is grab the low-hanging fruit and fix the easiest problems first. It's certainly easier than trying to work up a CIPP lining program. Manholes are easily accessible compared to pipes, and expensive specialized equipment is usually not necessary. Plus, your return on investment, as you saw earlier, from some of the numbers we showed you, it can be as fast as 1 year. I don't know any better deal than that. So, in closing, all of us at Parson are just really thrilled that you guys spent time with, you guys and ladies, excuse me, spent time with us today. And I hope that everything you wanted to get out of this that we provided. If not, give us a call and we'll fill in the blanks for you. And I hope that we can help you with the success of your next manhole rehabilitation project. Thank you very much for your time.
Yes, thank you indeed to both of our presenters at Parson. We would like to just make a couple of comments while we are switching out polls here for you. In the invitation to this event, you will have noted that 2018 kicked off the United Nations International Decade for Action for Sustainable Water for Sustainable Development. The most important, somebody I noticed in the chat panel asked about inflow and infiltration. And the biggest reason, I think, reflects back to the very first podcast that we did on this subject, which was, are you paying for rainwater? There is a direct link between the cost of running a collection and treatment facility, stormwater control, and the energy it takes to maintain the biological and the chemical balance in any wastewater treatment plant. And if the main source of the fluid coming to your plant is just from leaky manholes, then is this a sustainable project? I guess not. So we would like to call on everyone attending today to take this same approach, that when we plan to construct new or restructure, repair existing infrastructure, we should ask the basic question: how is this going to impact our drinking water supply? How is it going to sustain water quality? Thank you again to Craig Gore, Mike Ferrugia, and in the background is Kate Blyer, who's been managing all the bits and pieces, and we will get into the questions that have been asked here in the chat window. Do keep those coming in. Thank you for spending your time with us today. Please do feel free to share the link to this recording, which we will send out after the event. And hopefully some of you will have been impressed enough to also be considered becoming an H2 Outstanding supporter. We believe quite passionately that water and water education should be free and accessible. I am going to put our link in there and change my slide here. This is a quote that we use a lot. I'm not going to read it. You can do that while you're listening to me talking. A little bit about us. We are a public outreach and consulting organization. We are dedicated to the advocacy of protection of water as a vital human and ecological asset. And we believe this should be achieved through the implementation and the management of affordable, appropriate wastewater systems. We're a national and international education service provider. And it was interesting hearing Craig talk, because one of our board members is actually a process control manager for Anglia Water in the UK, one of the biggest water service providers in the southeast of Great Britain. And they were noticed yesterday, I think, at a meeting that the cost of controlling I&I for the London metropolitan area, we're talking about billions, not millions, but billions of dollars. So we are independent, we're impartial, we assist both individuals and communities in finding affordable options, financial and environmental advantages to implementing sustainable integrated water infrastructure. And that is because, quite simply, we do believe that water is water and not waste. So with that, I would like to invite both Craig and Mike to open up their microphones. Let's swap out this poll here and bring in another one. And remember, in the initial, while we're doing the introduction here, we were asking you where you are attending this meeting from today. And without going into details about why we're asking that, please do go ahead and type that into the chat window, and we will cover that at the close of the meeting. So Kate and Craig, Mike, take it away and look at your questions.
I see one question in there Craig has already answered about the freezing. We found, we are in the Northeast here where freezing is an issue. It's 30 degrees here today. I think it's 20-something where Craig is. And, we have found that the venting allows the manhole to drip down enough where the freezing doesn't become an issue. And if in some instances where it gets to be -5 for weeks on end, yeah, it can be. And I noticed one of the guys on there actually answered that question about the only real issue is it makes it tough to get the manhole open during that freezing period. But the fact that the manhole maintains a temperature of about 50 degrees, it's pretty rare that they do freeze up.
I see that Jim McCarroll asked about sending credit for 1 hour for the seminar. Vendor, is that something that we do?
Yes, we can certainly. If you would like a certificate for a PDH hour, we can't award that as credit, but if you would like proof of attendance, please do let us know in the chat window with a yes, I would like a PDH certificate, and we will certainly send you one.
All right. And Jim McCarroll, thank you very much for the kind words on the inserts really work. Jim is a longtime customer who has, I don't know, 1,000 or so by now, possibly inserts, and he keeps coming back to us. The other product that he's actually trying out now or has used recently is our Odor Eater insert, which I failed to mention that I just realized now. Basically, that product is an insert, thank you, Kate, with a PVC canister that's filled with carbon. And the idea is that, and the bottom is open, so the idea is that the air leaving the manhole, the odorous air, will go through the carbon, so the carbon will polish the air, and that little black knob on the top of the lid is a vent, same that we use in the insert. So the clean air will vent out of the unit, so we're not blocking the airway and allowing for ventilation. The reddish looking thing to the left of the lid is actually a duckbill valve, which allows the water to drain out of that particular model, because we would rather not have that accumulating, so we can get more airflow out of the insert.
Craig, I see
Thank you
another
for that,
question.
Jim.
Excuse me, thought you were done. I see another question out there that asks, how do you know that the manhole or maintenance hole has been adequately cleaned prior to applying a cementitious product?
Well, that's really a visual thing, Mike, and I'm not sure who asked the question, but it's pretty much a visual thing. You can go down there actually and get inside the manhole and touch around with your hand or a glove and kind of get a feel for it. It's really basically, if you look at it and it looks clean, we usually recommend cleaning the day before and then come back the next day, so it gives you some time to take a look at it, evaluate it. But that's pretty much what you have to do. Is I would get in the manhole and I would physically look at it up close and see if there's any areas that might have been missed.
I got another question Jacob just asked, and it's a great one. He asks, what is the thickness of the inserts where it contacts the manhole ring, and asks if in any way it will lift the lid above the surrounding pavement.
Yes, the inserts are 1/8 inch thick, average, so your manhole cover theoretically will be up by 1/8 of an inch. Now, we haven't really run into any issues with snow plows and so forth. A lot of manholes are already slightly inverted into the ground, just maybe from construction or paving or whatever reason. So it's typically not an issue, Jacob.
Well, you're welcome, Jacob.
I see Dean's comment. about inserts at school keep the kids from stuffing things down the pick hole. Well, we're gonna use that one, Dean. Thank you very much for that tip. Anyone else, Mike, that you noticed?
I don't see any other real questions there. I think we did pretty good. We got a few people asking for PDHs, but obviously we'll get a printout of this chat box, and Dendra will handle that one for you.
Yeah.
The only other thing I'd like to note again, I know we said it once or twice, but Dendra does a lot of work out there through this 501c, and if you can get your organization or somebody to do a little donation, a little bit goes a long way in helping her present this and many of her other very informative webinars that she does throughout the year.
Well, thank you for that, but we provide the service. It's you guys that provide the content, so thank you, but thank you.
Jacob asked another pretty good question. He asked if a vac truck is used to remove the grit. That's probably not a good idea because of the power of the vac trucks. Now, if you had a mini handheld unit, there are some mini ones that go in the back of pickup trucks, kind of like for portable toilets. That would probably work, but we would recommend manually removing it. In other words, pulling the insert out, taking it off to the side somewhere, cleaning any grit out, and then replacing the manhole, and of course paying attention that you clean the rim out really good on both the underside of the insert and of the frame. And Sequoia, you're welcome. We're glad we could have an event like this and look for some future ones. We definitely like the format.
And actually, this is for both Craig and Mike. A question came in via the text function, and I'm not sure we let people know that they could text the question in if they were on the phone. But this is for someone who deals with smaller systems, not the big, large municipal systems, but smaller on-site or community cluster type systems. Will the epoxy and the repair materials work as well for doing repairs for on-site systems?
Sure.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
The products are basically designed for any sewage environment, whether it be a manhole, wet well. I did mention septic tanks earlier. It's the same environment, so absolutely. As a matter of fact, when I bought a home about 2 years ago, the septic tank inspector came out and told me that my tank had failed because there was some corrosion. And I told him that I could fix it. And he didn't believe me because he said, no one's ever done that before successfully. I said, well, I think we can do that. And I got a friend of mine, and we went in and sprayed MH liner over the entire structure, or excuse me, it was CA liner 100 over the entire structure. And he came back a week later and was absolutely amazed at what we had done and immediately passed the septic tank for use.
Another great question here by Jamie. He said that we indicated that epoxy can be placed over the cement liner the same day, and he's asking if there's any issue with bonding and wouldn't the cement bleed water. And I think he's addressing the composite system.
Yeah, I see that question, Mike. Yes, he is, I believe. Jamie, keep in mind that we have designed these products to work in compatibility with each other. We're not taking an epoxy from one manufacturer and a cement from another. These products have been engineered to do exactly what we're doing with them. The bond that you get when you apply the epoxy to what I call cement in a plastic state, it's firm but it's not hard, is incredible because you're using a 5,000 or so PSI machine in a spray situation to apply the epoxy, and basically it's kind of shooting it into the pores of the concrete so that when the concrete cures, it kind of takes the epoxy with it. And the bond is just incredible. If you hand applied the epoxy, you would get a similar type of result. You wouldn't have such a dynamic effect from the spraying, of course, but you're still going to have a much better bond than waiting a week or so, which is, in some cases, that's what other companies recommend. you're going to have a much better bond doing it in a shorter period of time, which is, again, why we engineer these products.
Another thing to think about with that, Jamie, is when you're mixing our cementitious products, you don't just add a lot of free water, or what's called water of convenience, like you do with regular concrete. That water, that extra water, is put in there for, letting it flow and trowel. You're putting in a specific amount of water and no more than that, so you don't get a lot of bleed, and that's why the water won't bleed out. We have another question here. I'm sorry.
Good
Go ahead, Craig.
Okay. Just a good point, Mike.
Now, another question we have, and it's from William, and he wants to know, how would we suggest handling a wet well rehab where the rebar is missing or eaten away? Good question.
Well, that's basically back to our composite system that we were talking to Jacob about. You would first line the structure with a cement product, whether it's the Portland cement or the calcium luminate cement, to kind of rebuild that structure. It doesn't have to be built back to original dimensions, but I would suggest at least an inch or so of material on there, which you can do in one coat. And you trowel it, brush finish it, and then for a wet well, we would suggest applying epoxy over top, which again you can do within a 24, 48-hour period.
And Jacob asked a question. He says he has a contract out right now with 100 manholes being rehabbed. And he's wondering what 3 things that he should have his inspectors look for workmanship and process that may cause the cementitious and mechanical seals to leak and that may lead to failure. I think the answer to that first one would be, like Craig said, in the cleaning phase. The preparation phase is so important. And then obviously the next thing I would look for is to make sure that they selected the proper materials, and then thirdly that the installation crew has been approved and certified by the manufacturer, and that they're actually putting the products on as directed by the way the products are manufactured. Anything you want to add to that, Craig? I'm sure there's more.
Yes or no? Yeah, make sure that they've stopped all the infiltration. Right. Sometimes contractor may take a little shortcut on that, and that's going to pretty much doom the project from the start, because they'll never get the material to bond to that area. So I think adding that to what Mike said should get you well.
Believe it or not, that answers Jake's next question, which is mainly where do contractors cut corners that will result in failure down the road. And that's one area where they'll try to not stop the leak and just hope that it stops when the cementitious product cures. Another area where they'll do, sometimes they try not to put the product on as thick as you wanted to. Let's say your spec called for it to go on 2 inches thick, and they only want to use 1.5 inches because they feel that that's thick enough. So you want to be careful, and it's real easy to check how thick a product is by using some kind of wet film gauge.
Right.
We got a question here from Eberhard, and it says, are the ASTMs or similar standards that your liners meet the ones that we could use to specify the materials?
Sure. Every data sheet we have lists physical properties and the ASTM standards that are associated with that particular test, whether it be compressor strength, tensile strength, flexural strength, bond, etc. So yes, those are readily available.
Jacob, we appreciate the questions that you're asking. They were awesome questions.
Yeah, they really were, and they brought a lot of information out to the attendees.
Another question that came in via text, they appreciated the comment that you should always follow proper safety procedures as far as confined space or the handling of any of these products. They were asking, do you do any training on best practices for actually using these products?
We don't. Oh,
absolutely.
For safety?
We using our products?
Yes.
My mistake.
Yeah, our products. Yes. We will do in-house training at the customer facility so that they have all their people there, and we can kind of see the environment, see what their capabilities are, see what kind of equipment they have as far as trucks and trailers and pressure washers and so forth. because you need to have the right equipment to do the job. And to send a piece of equipment out and then have something happen with either the equipment or the product, it's typically not either the equipment or the product. It's typically either how it was used, or possibly we've had an instance where we didn't have a large enough generator used for one of our portable mixers and pumps, and the customer kept insisting that it was the equipment, and as it turns out, it was the power that they were providing to the equipment was inadequate. So absolutely, we really emphasize the fact that we will be with you at the start and at any time in the future.
I'm kind of sorry I missed that question because I thought you were talking about safety training, which I say leave that to the experts because safety is so important. And to add a little bit to what Craig just said, it's actually one of our specialties. We've done it through several municipalities, and we even made the cover of Municipal Sewer and Waste magazine about a year and a half or so ago with a municipality in West Virginia, where they saved so much money learning how to do it in-house that they actually have been rehabilitating manholes at a faster pace. And like I said, it got recognized by the right people, and an article was written up on it, and it actually made the cover of the magazine. So we're proud of that fact that our training is top-notch, and the fact that we do it on-site, so it's in actual true conditions, is what makes it so, top-notch, because anybody can show you something in a warehouse in perfect conditions, but when you're out there in the field and there's a leak that really can't be stopped unless you hit it up first maybe with some grout, and then maybe you have to use a hydraulic cement over that to get that leak to completely stop, so when you are putting on the cementitious product there's no bleed through or anything. So that on-site training becomes very important.
Yeah, Mike, and just to add to that, we've been around this game a long time, and we have some tricks of the trade, so to speak, and we didn't really get into all that today, but that is something that is beneficial for the customer, that when the situation arises, especially if we're on site, we can walk you through the process of taking care of that particular
Jacob
problem.
asked another excellent question here. He asks if we have any trying to read two questions at once. Do we have a list of preferred companies or persons that meet our expectations in skill and resources to install your products? Absolutely, yes. What you need to do is reach out to us, tell us what your geographical location is, and we work with anywhere from small mom-and-pop organizations where the owner actually gets into the manhole and does the work, all the way up to companies like Carillon and Height Camp and National Water Main that have offices all across the United States. There's another question here. It says, does anyone in the industry require a certificate to be held before they can purchase or install rehab products? Yeah, there are some manufacturers out there that actually sell territories. What we require is a proper vetting of the individuals, of the contractors, to make sure that they either know what they're doing, and if not, we need to go to that site and to that contractor and teach them what they're doing, the best practices that Craig spoke of earlier.
Okay, if anyone has entered a question in the chat window and it has not been addressed, because as I said, we do have a very large audience today, please do repeat your question in the chat window so that it doesn't get lost above the fold, so to speak. Let me make that a little bit bigger, just in case. And while...
I love Jim's question. Do you see that question there, Mr. Gall?
Well, Jim,
I have one
Jim actually was... Jim actually witnessed that firsthand with me having things in my trunk. I do occasionally, Jim, but not as regularly as I used to, but thanks for bringing that up. So you can see Jim and I have been around known each other for over 30 years.
I think we should probably end it here. Probably taken enough of everybody's time up. If anybody has any further questions, go ahead and email them to us directly, and obviously we'll reach out. And like Jacob, if you want to get a list of some people in your area, some companies that do the work, just go ahead and reach out to us through the info@parsonenvironmental.com, and we'll respond to it. We're very responsive to all emails and phone calls.
Yeah.
One thing we're proud of.
I would suggest that you put your contact information into the chat window, either of you, because then if people are watching this as a recording of the actual class as opposed to the YouTube, then they can go and just copy and paste anything that's in the chat window. And that goes for anybody. All of that text should be selectable. The links in there, just a quick note that unfortunately we had two references. The 2018 specs. There is a link in there. Kate, if you would you just type in both of the 2018 links one last time there, so that people realize that they can see what it was in 2015, but they can also see what the current brand new 2018 are. That being said, folks, let me go to the last of our slides here. Again, our contact information is on there on our business card. You also received that in the notice about the event and the link. A reminder, if you want PDH certificates, it will be for exactly 1 hour PDH certificate. Please make a note of that in the chat window. A quick reminder while we're wrapping up here that we are looking for 2018 topics, particularly concerning stormwater management and I&I, and I see a couple of them in there. Laterals rehabilitation, assistance for small municipalities that have heavy I&I issues. One quite interesting one there, Craig and Mike, about evaluating the actual energy and water savings from implementing an I&I program. And if we do that, I may see if our board member from Anglia Water would like to come in and talk about the costs and how they manage this issue in European settings. I see quite a lot of people have entered into the where are you today and what is the temperature. So please do go ahead and tell us where you are today. And actually, Mike, would you like to explain the incentive for actually filling that information in?
Yes, I will. Dendra came up with a great idea, and what we're going to do is we're going to give a $25 iTunes card to the person that is from the furthest distance away from our Reading, PA headquarters.
Yeah, speaking from what is still the coldest location, I'll have to excuse myself from the runners-up prize here. Oh, I see.
I think St.
Yeah,
Canada
I see that.
has you beat Denver. They're at -5 Celsius.
I really wanted an
no,
iTunes.
wait a minute. I can't do it.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to stop the recording, but we will leave the room open for a couple more minutes in case there are questions or you are still downloading. Thank you so much for attending today. It's been quite an amazing enrollment for this class, and because of that, we are looking to expand the capacity for next time. If you are watching this as a YouTube recording and you couldn't get in, please bear with us. We are going to make every effort to increase the size for these classes in the future. Thank you again. Remember that, as Margaret Atwood says in that, remember my child, remember you are half water. If you can't go through an obstacle, go around it, because water certainly does.